The classroom was filled with nervous energy as students gathered for their music lesson. The teacher, known for pushing her students to their limits, announced that today would be different. Instead of the usual warm-ups and practice, she would be assigning solos. When she called on a quiet woman sitting in the back, no one expected much. She seemed ordinary, the kind of person who blended into the background. Her clothes were simple, her demeanor humble, and she had barely spoken a word all semester. The teacher handed her a sheet of music, a complex opera solo that even advanced students struggled with. The class shifted uneasily, some whispering that it was too difficult, others curious to see if she would even attempt it. All eyes turned toward her, waiting for her reaction. She looked down at the notes, then back up at the teacher, her face calm, but unreadable. The teacher assumed she would stumble, perhaps even refuse. After all, who could expect a simple woman to handle such a challenging piece? Yet, something in her gaze hinted at more than what appeared on the surface. It was a look that carried both experience and restraint, as if she had faced stages far larger than this classroom. The room grew quiet, the kind of silence that made every heartbeat louder. The woman took the paper in her hands, her posture shifting ever so slightly, almost like someone stepping back into a world they once knew well. Students leaned forward, sensing that something unexpected was about to happen. What no one realized, not even the teacher, was that this ordinary woman had a past hidden in plain sight. A past that would soon break free the moment she opened her mouth to sing. The woman stood at the front of the room, holding the sheet music as if it were something familiar, not foreign. The students studied her closely, whispering among themselves, wondering if she would embarrass herself. To them, she was just an ordinary person, someone who had no place standing before an opera score filled with impossible notes. The teacher crossed her arms, almost certain this moment would prove her point about how difficult true opera singing really was. But what no one there knew was that this quiet woman had once lived a life very different from the one she carried now. Years ago, she had stood on great stages, dressed in flowing gowns, her voice filling theaters with power and grace. Her name had once been printed on posters, her performances praised in glowing reviews. But somewhere along the way, she had chosen to step away, trading spotlights for silence, fame for anonymity. No one in this room knew her story because she had never told it. The teacher tapped her foot impatiently, reminding her that time was running short. The woman simply nodded, her fingers brushing lightly over the sheet music. A faint smile crossed her face, not of arrogance, but of recognition. It had been years since she had faced these notes, yet they seemed to greet her like old friends waiting to be remembered. Students leaned in, curious now, sensing something unusual. The ordinary woman they thought they knew didn't look nervous at all. Instead, she looked like someone who had been here before, someone about to reveal a truth no one was prepared for. The room was still, hanging on her every move, waiting for the moment when silence would break, and her secret would no longer remain hidden. The teacher cleared her throat, urging the woman to begin, but the delay only deepened the unease in the room. Some students exchanged smirks, certain this would turn into an awkward display. Others leaned forward, their curiosity outweighing their doubts. The woman inhaled slowly, her eyes scanning the notes, though it seemed she hardly needed the paper. What the class could not see was the storm of thoughts running through her mind. She had walked away from this world for reasons none of them would understand. Stepping back into it now risked stirring memories she had tried to keep buried. The teacher, unaware of the weight behind her silence, pressed her again. To the teacher, this was only an exercise to expose how challenging opera could be, a lesson to humble students who thought music was simple. But she had chosen the wrong person. This so-called simple woman was not someone to be tested so lightly. Among the students, a few began to notice the way her stance shifted. One boy whispered that she looked like a professional, though his friends laughed it off. A girl in the front row, a choir member herself, caught the subtle way the woman adjusted her breathing techniques only trained singers knew. Questions began to ripple quietly among them. Who exactly was this woman? Meanwhile, the woman's own conflict grew sharper. She had promised herself never to step back into the spotlight, never to let her voice carry the weight it once did. Yet here she was, cornered by circumstance, expected to either fail or reveal what she had hidden. Her heart beat faster, torn between protecting her secret and answering the challenge placed before her. The classroom waited, suspended in the tension, unaware that everything was about to change. The classroom felt heavier with each passing second, as though the very air was waiting for her decision. The teacher's eyes narrowed, impatient, but also strangely intrigued by the woman's calm composure. The students had stopped whispering now, their attention locked on her every move. Even the smallest gestures, the way she held the paper, the way her shoulders lifted with a deep breath, seemed to carry a weight none of them could explain. The woman closed her eyes briefly, as if reaching into a place far beyond the walls of this classroom. Inside her mind, echoes of crowded theaters returned, memories of blinding lights and hushed audiences waiting for her first note. She had buried those moments long ago, but they resurfaced now with startling clarity. Her fingers tightened around the sheet music. She was no longer just a simple woman asked to sing. She was someone standing at the edge of a choice that could shatter the quiet life she had built. The teacher finally stepped back, giving her the floor. The silence in the room deepened, a silence so sharp it made every small sound, the creak of a chair, the shuffle of a shoe, feel magnified. The students leaned forward unconsciously, pulled into the tension. Some expected disaster, others sensed something extraordinary was about to unfold. The woman lifted her chin. Her breathing slowed, controlled, prepared. In that instant, she no longer looked ordinary. There was a fire in her posture, a quiet authority in the way she carried herself. The students felt it too, though they could not name it. They only knew they were on the edge of witnessing something far beyond what any of them had imagined. The moment before her first note felt like the longest heartbeat of their lives. Just as the woman parted her lips to sing, the classroom door creaked open. Everyone turned, startled by the interruption. A man stepped inside, carrying a stack of folders, clearly another teacher, but the moment his eyes landed on her, the folders nearly slipped from his hands. His face froze with recognition, a flicker of disbelief rushing across his features. The students glanced between them, confused. To them, he was just another staff member, but to her, he was a ghost from the life she had abandoned. He had once been her conductor, the man who had led orchestras during her most celebrated performances. The weight of his sudden presence crashed into her chest like a storm. The woman's composure faltered for the first time. She tried to steady her breathing, but the past she had kept hidden was now staring directly at her. The students picked up on the tension, whispering louder now, wondering why this newcomer looked so shaken. The music teacher noticed it too. Her curiosity sharpened. Though she said nothing, the man took a step forward, his voice low but carrying enough for the room to hear. "I know that face. I know that voice." His words sent ripples through the class. Murmurs broke out. What voice? What was he talking about? The mystery around the woman deepened, the ordinary image of her unraveling with each second. Now she faced more than just the challenge of singing a difficult opera solo. She faced exposure. If she sang, she would confirm everything he suspected. If she didn't, she risked losing the fragile control she still had over the room. The stakes had doubled, the tension sharpened, and every person present could feel that they were standing on the edge of a revelation that would change everything. The woman stood frozen for a moment, her eyes locked with the man who had once guided her through the grandest concert halls. The room was buzzing with whispers, but she knew there was no turning back now. Slowly, she lifted her chin, and with a steady breath, she began to sing. The first note rose like a wave, rich and powerful, silencing the room instantly. Her voice carried with a depth and control that no student, or even the teacher, had ever imagined possible. It was not just a performance. It was a revelation. Each phrase of the opera solo filled the classroom, vibrating through the walls, pulling every listener into her hidden world. The teacher's jaw dropped, students clutched their desks in awe, and the man at the door stood motionless, tears glinting in his eyes as memories came rushing back. By the time she reached the soaring high notes, the room was no longer just a classroom. It felt like a stage, and the audience sat spellbound, unable to look away. When her final note faded into silence, no one moved. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but stunned stillness, as though they were afraid to break the magic that lingered in the air. Then came the applause, hesitant at first, then erupting into thunderous clapping and cheers. The teacher looked shaken, realizing she had underestimated her completely. The students were wide-eyed, whispering to one another about how someone so ordinary could hold such extraordinary power. The man finally stepped forward, his voice trembling. "You disappeared without a word. Why?" But before she could answer, the bell rang sharply, breaking the moment. The students filed out in a daze, and the woman turned back to him with a knowing smile. "Some stories," she whispered, "are not meant to end the way you expect." And with that, she walked out, leaving behind a silence heavier than her song. The hallway outside the classroom was quiet as the woman walked away, her footsteps echoing softly. Inside, the students still buzzed with excitement, replaying the moment over and over in their minds. Some spoke of her as if she were a legend who had stepped into their ordinary day, while others wondered how someone like her could have stayed hidden for so long. For them, it was more than just a surprise performance. It was a lesson that people carry stories far deeper than what we see on the surface. The teacher lingered in silence, humbled in a way she had not expected. She had given the solo as a challenge, certain it would expose weakness, but instead it had revealed greatness. It was a reminder that judgment based on appearances often blinds us to true talent and resilience. The man who had recognized her stood by the door, still shaken. His mind raced with unanswered questions: why she had walked away, why she had chosen anonymity over fame. But as he watched her disappear down the hall, he realized perhaps the answers were not his to demand. Sometimes people step away not out of failure, but to find peace in a life beyond applause. For the woman, the choice to sing that day had not been about reclaiming the stage, but about showing a part of herself she had locked away. In the end, her song was less about performance and more about truth. She reminded everyone listening that greatness can live quietly in the most unexpected places, and that even a simple voice can carry the power to transform a moment forever. And though she walked away again, the echoes of her opera would remain, etched in the memory of everyone who heard it.